Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Today's April 4th, 2022. This is the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, special meeting. I think this is the first one that I've been called to at 12 o'clock, and I appreciate everyone's flexibility in joining. Before we get started, pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting will be conducted via remote means only. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by tuning to Comcast Channel 8, Verizon Channel 26, or online at www.northandovercam.org. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the town website an audio or video recording transcript or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. So with that said, I will just do a very quick roll call. If I call your first name, please just say here. George.
Here.
Rob.
Here.
Roger.
Here.
Joan.
Here.
Laurie.
Here.
And Chris. Chris is also here. Thank you. So I'll call this meeting to order. First agenda item is to receive an update from our treasurer. I know, Rob, we just had a meeting a few weeks ago, but if you could just refresh our memory as to what our current balance is, I think that would be most helpful for our next agenda item.
Certainly. As of the end of February 28th, the trust funds were $866,655. $866,655.60. I haven't received the March reconciliation, not surprisingly to this point, but we aren't expecting any significant movement since we have not authorized any additional expenditures.
Well, we did. We authorized $100,000 for the design. We authorized $50,000 for the consultant, and we authorized what did we say? $200 for the down payment assistance.
That's what I thought. Give me 1 second. So, Rob, you're saying that the 866 doesn't account for any of those?
It does not. And before this meeting, I looked back at did we actually approve $200,000 for the design work? I didn't see anything in the minutes authorizing that. I saw the 50 for the consultants, then the third-party reviews.
It was part of our CPC application that we approved. 100 from us and 100 from CPC.
Okay. So no, none of that money is included in the 866 balance, 866K balance.
Laurie, when did we vote on the design?
I'm sorry, what?
When did we vote on the $100,000 towards the design?
When we voted on the CPC application?
And was that in January?
Probably.
I looked at January and February. I didn't see it. It spoke of the 50K for the third party. I didn't see a detailed discussion on the design money.
So
hold on. We approved the application for the CPC on February 15th. Part of that application showed $100,000 request from CPC and $100,000 contribution from the trust. And then that same date, we voted $50,000 for the consultants.
Right.
None of that money's out though at this point. You're drafting the grant. We don't have any. We haven't seen anything for the $100,000 in design work, have we?
Right, but the point is, we've allocated the money, so we need to know what's left, because we need to decide today how much we're gonna put in this for a match for Fountain Drive in this application. If the application doesn't go through and we don't get the funding, we can always rescind it, but we need to be able to show we're matching something, and we can't match more than we have available. So we have to take into consideration our earmarks that we've already voted on. I'm just trying to see the exact amount that was voted for the down payment assistance.
Yeah, and that was done last fall, right, Laurie?
Yeah.
I'm going through.
I thought we said we could do 7 at the max of 30, so we said 210. Let's see.
Yeah, I'm not finding that right now in terms of the the actual number, but if we were to assume that that's taken from the balance of the 866, we are looking at
360K committed.
360, leaving us with 506,000. I'm just going through our meeting minutes from last year. And as I do that, just for the sake of time, can we, why don't we move on to the next agenda item? And Laurie, if you want to just take that away.
Sure. So as we do every year, we received an email from, well, actually, we get them from Congressman Moulton, but we just got one too from Senator Warren. Their offices ask the towns whether they have any submissions for federal funding as part of that budget. And after speaking with the town manager and other division directors, we decided that this would be a good project to put forward, particularly with affordable housing being a topic for so many in government these days. And last year they provided $700,000 to Harbor Light for an affordable housing development in Beverly. So that's kind of our, that to me is like the dollar standard that we know we could request. Obviously, we don't have that much money to say we can match that. And we don't, the match, I don't believe is a requirement. It's just good to have. Obviously, there's going to be several funding sources for this project. And we didn't want to let this one go by without at least putting in, because even if it doesn't get approved next year, we can come back when we have more definitive numbers. So it's worth putting in the request and see what happens. Now, I mean, if we think the design is going to be more than we have allocated, we certainly can just ask for that. But I think we should not limit ourselves. If they're willing to put in $700,000 for Harbor Light and approve that, we should try to put in as much as we possibly can.
Laurie, is this in combination with the previously approved numbers that we were just discussed, or is this in addition to?
This would be us allocating in addition to. So a dollar amount that we can tell our legislators how much we have allocated to date. I am going to mention that we'd be putting an application into the CPC. And then Rob, if you have any other funding sources that you think we'll be looking at in the future, I can mention them that, you know, nothing's been secured, but this is what we're doing. This is like our game plan.
Right, and I can give you an update on that. Maybe I'll send you. I can provide. There are funding sources available. Maggie and I had a discussion with Lori Schufelt over at MHP, and she gave us some good guidance on funding for this type of project. So we can provide some context for that. The question I had, Lori, you said that the need for the match isn't required. I thought I saw a number for $500,000. Could we offer to match something less than the full 500? Because that would be the balance of the trust funds, if I understand things correctly. Could we match 200 and ask for 5, or is that?
I don't see why not. There's nothing. All they're asking is what's the total budget? And if the budget's more than the request, what other sources funding will make up the difference? We can certainly, you know, project that our cost is going to be whatever we said, 5 million. You know, if we think it's going to be 5 million, and here are the funding, you know, one funding source that's been committed would be ours. And then other funding sources are CPC and then whatever else you had in mind.
And would it be double dipping to use the 250,000 that's committed already as a match, an offering for the match for the CPF program?
No, actually, that's a good point. I mean, we've already committed 250 for consultants and the design. Right? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Question,
So
yes.
just break that down. So if we wanted to ask them for 500,000, we could say we are matching 500,000 for this program and let them know that 250 has already been allocated for design and consultants, and you know, whatever. If we decided 300 will go towards construction or site whatever you call it.
Well, I mean, couldn't you sort of rewrite history a little bit and say that the trust voted to allocate $500,000? Now 250 of that has been allocated already. So there's a remaining 250 that could be used to match whatever grant this source, the government or our Congress people grant us.
Potentially might be complicating it unnecessarily, George. I mean, if we can, the form sounds like there's some flexibility in, you know, how you categorize the money, and I don't think anybody would dispute that, you know, the $250,000 has been offered by the trust since it's already in the minutes. It's just categorizing it. I think there might be the difference as opposed to trying to reorganize what's happened in the past.
I think if we're not able to find that vote, I think we should vote it again for the down payment assistance program or any other ones that we've allocated. Just to get it on the record. And we could actually do that at the next meeting, because that's not going to impact this at all. I mean, the CPC application is on for town meeting, so it's already there.
Just a question for clarification. I thought we had committed 100,000 to design, but it's 200,000.
So the CPC application, we put in for 100,000 from them, and we showed them that we would match 100,000.
Yep.
So it may not cost 200,000 for the design, but we'll be getting, after July 1st, we'll be getting the $100,000 CPC. And we already, as part of the application, because they always required us to match, which I don't think it's going to happen in the future, but that's why it was done that way. So we showed that we were willing to put up. Now, we could argue that 100,000, 50 of that was for consultants. However, because we already did that. So it was just a way of putting the application in to show that we were willing to put $100,000 of our money in addition to $100,000 of CPC to get the design done. I think the design's going to cost more than 200,000. I mean, I don't, Rob, I don't know what your comments would be on that, but that seems pretty low for a design.
No, I
Isn't
would
it
agree.
usually-
I would agree. It would cost more.
Yeah.
And
isn't
But
it
but that'll
10%?
be over 2 years or so during the application process. So typically during the application process, you have to have some schematics, some basic preliminary work done that might cost, 50 to 100,000. And then once you're selected for funding, the construction drawings need to be prepared, which would cost a significant amount of money. Another
Much
couple.
more than that. Yeah. Isn't it like 10% of the cost of construction is usually what it's estimated at?
You'd negotiate under. I would hope that we'd do better than that. The last couple I've done were at 4 or 5%, but the point's taken that it's a big number.
Okay.
One other thing that should be mentioned, there is some reward in these applications, as I understand it, and the program, the supportive services program that Maggie and Laura spoke about. One of the targeted groups could be frail elderly, which seem to fit pretty well with what's out at Fountain Drive at this point. If you're selected for funding, these are well-funded programs. There is a reward for local money being in the deal, but it doesn't have to be 50% of the project or anything like that.
Just has to be something.
Yeah, I mean, they'd like to show a good faith effort. I think I need to look at the program, but typically something like 25% is something that's rewarded in the scoring system. Between some of the funds that we've allocated, between the CPC money that might be available, or you had mentioned that there's about $300,000 that they wanted to talk to us about taking a more active role in. And some of this money, there's certainly a good chunk of money to offer the project without bankrupting the trust.
Yeah, I think we're going to have a good portion of CPC funds available next year.
Right.
Obviously, the housing authority's not going to come forward with anything outside of this project. I don't know if any other affordable housing projects will come online or apply, but I think that, since you can borrow against CPC money, that's another option. But that's all for next year, once we figure out where we're at and where we're going with it. So I certainly think that we could, on this application for the federal government is let them know that, design costs, what we put in for design costs, we expect them to exceed that amount. Consultants are probably going to exceed the amount that we have allocated.
A financial consultant is going to exceed 50,000?
Over the course of the project, it will. Certainly not the upfront section here. And we're thinking that some of that money might be used to talk to attorneys, land use attorneys, if you recall, to help us understand.
Well, I mean, I can understand the total consultant bill being more than 50,000, but I'm a little taken by surprise that the financial consultant alone would cost more than 50,000.
Well, we didn't say that. I just said any consultants are probably going to go higher than that.
I think both points are accurate. I think we're going to end up the project. We won't be spending anything, but the housing authority will be spending more than $50,000 if this project is successfully funded on financial consultants. And there's also going to be expenses from the land use attorney or attorneys, in addition to other attorneys.
So just one thing, Rob, getting back to your point, one of the questions is what problem will the project address and which communities and populations will benefit from it. So you're saying the frail and elderly, that's a good term to use?
That's the way I believe Maggie was leaning. Once again, Maggie's the project owner. We would want to double check with her, but it seemed to profile well. It was one of the groups that are targeted to be supported with this supportive housing program, and it profiles well with the existing community over there. So she thought it might be a good fit.
Okay.
I kind of jumped in and monopolized the conversation with regard to the dollars. Personally, I guess I'd express concern about another 500 when there's only a little over 500 in the account. My vote would be that we come in something less than the remaining 505 that we discussed earlier, particularly in light of the fact that we might be able to claim some of the design money or reclassify some of the design money in that application as already committed.
Any other thoughts on that point?
I have to agree with Rob that we should not authorize 500,000. And since we've already spent 250,000, allocated 250,000, I think that allocating another 250,000 sounds more reasonable for a total of 500,000.
And I'm going to agree with Joan and Rob. Joan specifically, I like those numbers, Joan.
And please recall, just to have a thorough discussion, that if we don't have to have a full match of the ask. So if we as an entity feel that the 250 we've already allocated is sufficient to fulfill our obligation for the $500,000 ask, that if I understood what Lori was saying, that would be adequate also.
Yeah. Right. So given that point, Rob, if we weren't to allocate any more than the 250,000 already, if we were to commit more than that, that would leave us with $500,000 that we could use for other programs or other investments. I know last week during the last meeting, we started talking about what are some other potential ways we could use the money, whether it's continuing things we have now or reviving things we've had in the past. If we have $500,000 as opposed to 250,000, I think that's a very big difference.
Another factor to consider is there is public funding available to help with some of these pre-development costs too. The trust has stood up here and helped the Housing Authority, but MHP mentioned last time in that same call that I think they had a program to help with pre-development costs of either 30 or 50,000. She was going to send the program guide over to us. So there's money there. Plus, I know CDAC, Community Economic Development Assistance Corp, has some pre-development money to help with some of the upfront expenses also. And sometimes there's a benefit to leverage this a little bit until we have a better feel for the viability of the project.
I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. As I understand it, this is just for the application that the town is going to put in for this community, community project, community program. And as part of that application, they want to show support by the town. And so it's just our support. Well, and I think if we indicate that we'll match whatever the state grants on that program up to 250K, that shows a fair amount of support, because the application should also point out that we've already allocated 250K, assuming town meeting approves 100K from CPC.
Correct.
And there'll be other sources, Rob, but that's the financial consultant's job to get those.
Right. And I apologize if I've unnecessarily muddied the waters, but my point is there's funding available. We don't have to do it by ourselves, and there are other options too, in addition to that.
But right now, we're not worried about the total funding for the project. We just want to make the application as strong as we can, by showing local support for the project.
Absolutely.
And part of that though is saying where else we're going to look for funding, which is why I would like to know what are some of the ideas of other funding sources. I want them to know that we've thought about this and this is what we're willing to provide, but we're also going to CPC this year. We're going to CPC next year. There may be funding available through fill in the blank.
There's a supportive housing program from administered by DHCD,
Okay,
which is designed, as the name indicates, for these type of smaller scale projects. And
right.
and
Okay.
it seemed like a good profile for what we're doing. Now we haven't, I think the CPF application might be that's next week or something, so it's a bit quicker than we are. But we're doing research on it, and that's what my understanding of where Maggie was going to look for the funding to.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's all good to put in the narrative so they don't just think we're just throwing this in and we haven't put any thought to it when they say you have a $5 million project and you're only allocating 500,000.
Right.
You know what I mean? It shows that we've been in discussions, and yeah, it may be early, but if we can secure this for next year and that, or at least get it in, and then we've planted the seed that if they don't approve it this year, we can certainly put it in again next year. But I think as part of the narrative, we should mention everything we have been doing to get this thing off the ground.
Good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of that, I guess, Laurie, too, is that that's why we'd like to fund a financial consultant to see what other funds are out there, and just based on the time where we are now. I mean, there are future funding rounds that I'm sure we'll be anticipating, and the financial consultant will be able to tell us what those funds are and how we can apply for that. So.
Right. And I think in the narrative, what I would say is that the trust has allocated $50,000 already for consultants to help us seek out funding or something to that effect. It's just getting all the information to them that is accurate.
Right.
To help them be able to evaluate. Because I don't understand why they do this, but apparently there's two separate applications. One's for Senator Warren, one's for Congressman Moulton. I don't know why they can't just put one application in. So one's due on one date, one's due on another date. But I'm going to put the same information in both applications.
I was going to say, can you just submit the same application twice?
Well, they're different applications, but the information, yeah, I'm going to use the same information, obviously.
Okay.
Laurie, what is the I'm sorry if you've already brought this up. What is the entity that's submitting the application? Is it the town? Okay.
Yes. So I would like us to vote on two things. One, well, it's kind of obvious, but it'd be good to vote on again, whatever the dollar amount is that we're willing to earmark for it. And two, to have you, Chris, write a letter of support. So Maggie's already sent me a letter of support. I don't think we need them for the application, but one of the questions is, are you able to get letters of support? What sources of community support exist, and are you able to provide letters? So because it's the town making the application and not the trust, the town would submit it with a letter of support from the trust, with a letter of support from the housing authority. Unfortunately, I can't get one from CPC because they don't meet again. I can certainly ask Brian if they'd be willing to. I think they have to call a meeting for town meeting, but that would be too late. But I don't know if during their deliberation process for this budget, if we can send the letter in, later on. I can certainly ask CPC if they are going to have a meeting prior to town meeting to do that.
One way to show CPC support, it seems to me, would be to let them claim that 100K. So the town's the 100K from CPC, 150K from the Affordable Housing Trust are examples of town support.
Yeah, Yep.
It's a good idea.
Okay. So to the first point, about just clarifying how much funding we are going to allocate, so far is 150,000. I think Roger and Joan earlier were talking about allocating an additional 250,000. I would err on the side of being conservative financially on this and just stick with 150,000 that we've already committed so far.
Mm.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think we're earmarking the money, so I thought it was our intent one way or the other that we were going to earmark. We had been throwing around $500,000 last year for a total, before the down payment assistance program. So I like the idea of having it including the 150 in that we've already said. So I mean, I would be happy with the 250 additional. I
So
mean,
what-
that's really only 400 because you're not counting the 100 from CPC. So if you did 250 plus 150 we've already allocated, that's only 400.
And Rob, you're saying you anticipate that this money would be used in the course of 2 years?
Well, that's another good point, Chris. If this is an earmark, these funds wouldn't come in, as I suspect. The CPF funds wouldn't come in until the project's successfully funded and we get to the construction closing, which would be probably a couple years out. And our matching funds wouldn't need to be put on the table until that point either. So, we could be talking quite a ways, a couple years out for this 250 to actually be put on the table.
But it would be out of our pocket. I mean, it would be committed, so we can't.
Committed, but we wouldn't have to write the check, right?
Yeah.
So, if we were to do, if we were to do this, then, for all intents and purposes, we're looking at having a little over $200,000 to fund other programs as of today. And of course, that probably will grow. But, it's just we're dedicating a lot of funding now to this project. We don't know where it's going to go. So, I mean, it's very possible it doesn't get spent in the next couple of years. But I just want to, I guess, make sure that we fully understand that this is going to tie our hands in terms of other things until we get more funding.
Well, I think we'd have a little bit more than what you said, Chris, because right now we have about 850. We have a little over 850. So subtracting off the 150 that we've committed, that's 7. And then if we committed 250, that would leave 450 still in our bank account.
Right. And
because we're going to get 100,000 from the CPC.
But you're not counting the 200 and something that we already allocated for the down payment assistance program or the 50. So we figured it's a 506 after all of our earmarks already. So if we allocate 250, we would have 256 left.
Well, so you're saying that we've allocated 200 for the down payment assistance program that hasn't come out of our bank account yet.
Right.
Yes.
I believe that's what we decided. Now, I'd have to go back and look for the minutes, but I thought we had always said it was maximum of 30,000. We originally were going to say 200, but then we were like, oh, well, let's make it even if everybody were to have 30,000. Right. So we said 210, I believe.
205 is what I see in the minutes, but
205.
very close.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we've already allocated that.
Okay,
I mean,
so that's 350 that we've allocated from 850 is 500,000. If we allocate 250 today, that leaves 250.
Mhm.
I guess. Okay.
Right, that's what, we were talking a little over 200. Perhaps another way to approach it would be maybe we should try from the other side. Is there a number that we feel would be, what's the level that we feel we need for the program to document a good faith effort? I think that, we're matching the federal government here. We're a little trust. It seems like if we got up to maybe 50% of what the federal government is proposing, it would show a good faith effort at the local levels, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, that would be, if we're gonna ask for 500, we said we were allocating 250.
Right. I guess I wonder if it's a stretch for our small little affordable housing trust to try to match the federal government's commitment here. This is unusual. I'm not usually involved with the matching of in the development of these things. So I would think a pretty compelling argument could be made that a 50% match offered by a small community trust fund would show a good faith effort as to the sincerity of the town and the organization to this project.
But Rob, what you're saying in effect is we should tone back the ask. And I would say, no, we're asking the federal government, jack it up.
No. I'm still with the $500,000 request.
Okay. And then I don't think we have to match. We don't have to agree to match the full amount. We'll match it, say 50 cents on the dollar.
That's what I tried to say, George. I must not have been clear on what I was trying to say. That's what I was saying, that I think 50% on the dollar might be a good faith effort for a match level for a federal program.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
So,
I misunderstood.
so my only comment would be, it's not that I disagree with what you've been saying. This money has been sitting in the trust for almost 25 years. And we have not been able to come up with a way to spend it. So we've been doing these little programs, which are great. And I think we should continue to do that. But my goal when I got on here was that the trust would not be needed any longer, that we would spend all this money and we have done our job. That money was specifically allocated by Edgewood for elderly housing. That's just my point. I don't see us coming back. Like, if we're going to say it's a total of 500, then let's just do it a total of 500 and be done with it. So the trust has 250 left. We don't have anybody banging down our doors for that 250,000. We've had the down payment assistance program allocated. We had the rental assistance program allocated. We've used the home funds. I just think that we should just, if we're going to do it, I'd rather us just decide now that we're going to allocate whatever dollar amount and then have that set aside and move on to whatever the next program is that we want to talk about. I don't think leaving 250 in there is a bad thing. I think that given our history of what we've spent our funds on, that's right around what we've been funding for programs. That's 2 Bread and Roses houses. It's a rental assistance program. And we're still going to be going to CPC every year. Well, hopefully we won't be going to CPC every year. Hopefully next year they're going to decide you're getting whatever the 10% is.
I think what you said is something we might want to flesh out a little more. Laura, is that our objective, to spend all the money and go out of business, or are we looking to be a viable entity going forward between the CPC and the inclusionary zoning? Isn't the inclusionary zoning going to have a pool of money coming along?
What I'm saying is from the beginning, the trust never had a funding source. The funding source was Edgewood. That Edgewood money has been sitting in here since Edgewood was developed and not been spent. And it's just, in my opinion, that I'm not saying to shut down the trust. I'm just saying, like, our goal should have been at some point, even before any of us were on here, or who, I don't know who was on it from the beginning, but we should have had, that money shouldn't have been sitting there for 25 years when it could have been used to help the community.
It's a bit of a, misrepresentation, perhaps. It's been replenished with the CPC funds. There have been other sources coming in. So I would offer it's a bit of an overstatement that it's been sitting there doing nothing over the years, but perhaps I'm
No,
picking.
I'm not saying we're not doing anything. I'm just saying that I think we're not helping anybody by letting it sit in a savings account. That's the only point I'm trying to make. And so I think if we only want to allocate 150, if we only want to allocate 200, whatever it may be, I just think we should decide now. This may not even go through. Who knows what's going to happen after we find out what all of these feasibility studies or these preliminary plans or whatever it is happens. But I think we should decide what our commitment's going to be now to this project. And if we want to increase it later, great, because we're going to get more money from CPC or we're going to get more money from inclusionary zoning, whatever it may be, then great. But I think we should at least set what our goal is to contribute, because that's going to be what we're going to use for every single one of these financial applications. I don't know what's going to come along between now and, next month or 2 months from now, or, when we're not meeting. At least we can say, this is what we've done. And if we decide next year to allocate more, we allocate more. But I think we need to set what our commitment is today.
So, Lori, I think we definitely appreciate your perspective on this, and I totally get what you're saying. It's better to use the money than let it sit in a bank account. But I'm just concerned about, personally, I just committing so much of our money that we have right now to this project, which we don't know how viable it is or not. And that if we were to commit $500,000, any decision we make from this point forward will limit our ability to focus on other things we might want to do. But I would anticipate your counterpoint would be, well, what are we going to do with the money then? But I do think there's a difference of having $200-something thousand versus $400,000 or $500,000.
No, but, well, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it is a big discussion. I'm just afraid of committing $500,000 now when we're not really sure how viable this is, and that will impact our future decisions on other funding opportunities.
But what I would say though is that we won't actually spend that 500,000 until it is a viable project. Like Rob says, it's at closing, and if they ever get to closing, that means that a lot of people besides ourselves are convinced that the financial estimates look plausible, look reasonable. It's a viable plan. People are agreeing with the plan, and we're going to start digging. And so we're not going to lose $500,000 on a project that's totally unreasonable or totally unrealistic.
No, of course not. My point, George, is that we're earmarking the funds. So for all intents and purposes, going forward, we're going to have to assume that the money's used.
Yeah.
Purpose. And
well, yeah, and then
so my proposal would be that we simply just meet in the middle. Perhaps not fund the 500,000. Maybe we fund closer to $400,000. Depending on what folks think here, but I would just feel more comfortable having a bit more cushion in our accounts, just because our mission is to serve the entire town. I'm just concerned we devote so much of our current funds to one project, which would only be devoted to a certain subset of the population.
So I'm confused. So you're closer to 400. That's what 250 would do. That would bring us to 400. 150 that we've already allocated and 250 today would be 400 we've allocated to the project.
Well, we could make the argument with the CPC funds, which documents their commitment. Also, the town is offering 400,000 of a match, which might be an approach. That might be the compromise that we're looking for. I like the idea of building off the consensus here that we would like to invest some more money and we're supportive of it, but it's just the dollars that's at the question.
So we can vote on 150 from the trust, add that to the additional 150, and then the 100 from the CPC.
Is that what you're saying, Chris? That sounds like a reasonable number. So we'd have a $400,000 match on a $500,000 request from the federal government. That seems to show that certainly, I think an objective person would show that's a pretty good commitment by the town.
Right.
Well,
I'm
I
also
would-
going to put in here the ARPA fund requests from home.
Well, that's
They
right.
should be getting their applications out soon, right?
That's right.
Their ARPA funding.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I'm sorry, what did you just say? I heard home and,
The North Shore Home Consortium, they should be releasing their application, I would think sometime soon for the ARPA funding that they got.
oh,
You'd
So
include
that's-
that in the funding, but we wouldn't claim that as a local commitment, would we?
Well, we're part of the North Shore Home Consortium.
no, but I think also,
It's an additional application that we'd be making.
Good. So it's part of the funding stack.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Absolutely.
So
but I guess, the way I understand it though, we have a little over 850. We've committed 200, 150, so that's 350. So that leaves, we have around 500,000 that's uncommitted. And right now what we're deciding is how much of that 500,000 we want to commit to matching whatever we get under this community project funding program. Is that?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And then we were at I thought we were, well, there was, the number 250 was suggested and I thought supported. And then Laura, you said you wanted to go higher than that 250 because you want to, I'll put words in your mouth. You wanted our bank account to go to zero essentially.
No, that's not what I said. I said the balance would be 256,000 that would be left.
And you're fine with that? In other words, you said your mission was to,
I'm fine with it.
okay.
I know Chris isn't. But I did not say it would be down to zero. If
Well,
I was saying the 500 total, so like Joan and Raja had said, 250. So 250 plus the 150 we've already committed.
yeah, okay.
So I guess the question on the table, and Chris expressed concern, which I'm sympathetic to actually, that, it's dedicating a large proportion of the funds to this one project, and perhaps, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but proposed a smaller contribution. I believe, did you suggest the 150 additional? So the
I'm
two,
suggesting 150, yes.
so we've put 150 in, we earmark another 150, and then include the CPC funds, if appropriate, as a local commitment also. So that would get us to $400,000 match of a $500,000 request.
Correct.
Thank
I
you,
like
Rob.
If
I'm
that's-
going to make a motion to approve 150,000 from the trust for the Fountain Drive project.
Additional.
Laurie, before we do that, I don't think we all need to be unanimous. I mean, I have my personal feeling. You may have 3 or 4 other people on this call who agree with you. So if you want to put up a motion with your numbers, I suggest we vote on that. I don't want to impose my personal belief. And if everyone else agrees with you, I think that's perfectly okay. So,
Well, perhaps you could
Yeah,
get,
no, that's
could
why
we
I
get-
made the motion, because I just think that's the only way. We just need to vote on it
yeah,
Thank you.
but I think you're suggesting a motion
for 150.
my numbers, but I think
Yep.
you should make a motion on the numbers you were proposing earlier. That's what I'm suggesting.
Folks, why don't we just ask Roger and Joan what their thoughts are as opposed to making a motion?
Wait a second,
Well,
can I,
technically, you're really not supposed to have a discussion until you make a motion, so I
Oh,
just
okay.
figured might as well make the motion.
All right,
All
don't
right,
say
well,
anything, Roger. Roger, don't even think about saying anything. We're gonna make a motion first.
does anyone want to second Laurie's motion?
yeah, well, I'll second it.
Thank you, George.
I understand, Laurie, I understand the motion is that we'll allocate 150,000 out of roughly 500,000 that we have that we,
Additional.
well, I was gonna say that we,
Available.
that are unavailable, right? Of the 500,000 that's available, we'll allocate 150,000. Is that your motion?
I think we ought to
My
use
mo-
the word additional, or we're gonna get confused between the 150,000.
Yeah, George, that's what she was saying. So basically, 500,000 unearmarked. The motion is to spend 150,000 of that.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll second that. And then, Chris, I'd like to ask you, your wishes would be to allocate less than that. Is that right?
At this time, yeah.
Okay.
Just based on the funding we have available, the 500,000 going, if we allocate 150,000 now, we have $350,000.
Yeah.
If we allocate 350,000, right? Because that would take us up to $500,000 for the project in total.
Wait a minute. I thought you wanted to go. We were talking. The motion is for 150. Now you're suddenly talking 350, and I thought you thought 150 was too high. I'm not following.
I will take back what I just said, but I mean, you're right. That's what I'm suggesting, George.
150 is too high.
No. I'm saying 150 is. I'm happy with 150.
Oh,
I had suggested 250 originally. I'm fine with 150. I just think my point is we just need to allocate so that when future applications come along, I'm consistent with what we have said we were allocating.
Then Chris, I'm fine going from the 250 to 150. I'm
So am
fine with that.
So am I.
But I know we're approaching 1 o'clock, but Joan, Roger, I just want to make sure that, are you fine with 250?
Yes, after hearing everybody's opinion, I'm fine. Yes.
Well, to your point, Chris, I'm fine with 250 too.
Okay.
So I know what you're trying to get at. You're trying to get the vote out. And just for the sake of argument, even if Roger, Joan, and I all voted for 250 and George, you and Rob didn't, it would fail because it would be a tie.
I wouldn't vote for 250 now.
Okay. So there you have it.
All right, and Laurie, I'm sorry to kind of muck up what you were envisioning. I just I do. It doesn't mean we're not going to commit another $100,000 later.
No, it doesn't, which is why I'm fine with the 150. And don't apologize, Chris. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and I think we all do great things. And when we come together, this is why we have these meetings so that we can talk them through.
I think it's good we had a discussion where we kind of were unanimous on everything. So it's nice to have a discussion on it.
It is. For as long as I've been involved, all our votes have been unanimous, which has been great. So, and they followed very lengthy discussions a lot of times too. So I certainly appreciate that. So for the sake of time, I will do a roll call on the vote. So the vote or the motion is to allocate an additional $150,000 towards the project design funding. George,
I vote yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Laurie,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
and Chris is a yes. So that's a unanimous yes on that motion. Thank you. And the final actually not a motion up yet, I don't think, but Laurie, you had asked if I could write a letter of support on behalf of the trust. So I will put up a motion for that. Does anyone want to second it?
I'll second that, Chris.
Thank you, Roger. George, yes or no?
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Laurie,
Yep.
Joan,
Yes,
Roger.
Yes.
Chris is also a yes, thank you. So unanimous on that. Laurie, I'm just probably going to reach out to you about the timing and all that in terms of the letter going out. But
Okay.
I don't think we need, I don't think that's trust business. So we have our next meeting on the books for just a couple weeks from now. And I think the goal will actually be due to scheduling to propose and finalize an agenda by the end of this week. So I'll reach out to ask us if there's anything you'd like to talk about.
what's the date of the meeting?
Good question, Joan. It is, I have 5:30 on the 19th, which is next Tuesday.
Oh, 2 weeks.
I will not be.
2 weeks from tomorrow, right?
2 weeks from tomorrow, yeah. You won't be here, Joan?
No, I'll be in Florida.
Great place to be.
Ooh, you had to rub that in, Joan.
I could perhaps join you, but if you need me, call me and I'll join you.
Okay.
Chris, I have a hard stop at 1. Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Yes. Does
Make a
anyone
motion.
second it?
Okay,
I'll
Like to make-
second that motion.
okay.
George,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Laurie,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Roger.
Yes.
Chris is also a yes. So meeting adjourned. Well, we'll reach out about the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So long, everybody.
Goodbye.